Hey, what's up guys, Rado here, and today I have something special for you. You're gonna love it. Our buddy Michael Fisher from Nebraska did this absolutely amazing, one-of-a-kind, two-stroke restoration. He took 1989 RM125 that he found on OfferUp, was sitting somewhere in the barn for many years, full of dust, spider webs, missing parts. He took that bike, put a lot of time, effort, elbow grease, money, research, all that good stuff, and brought this bike to the beauty that it is today. Also, Jay Clark from Dirt Bike TV helped him a lot towards the end of the build. You guys just grab some popcorn, sit back, relax, because you're gonna love what you see at the end of this video.
One of the easiest, funnest parts of these builds is tearing it down. So enjoy that part of it, but I say take your time when you're tearing it down. Make notes. I think it's really important to make notes and take photos along the process, because it's going to be months, or even like my buddy Rado, it could be a year or two before you get this thing back together. It's fun watching Michael work on this. We just enjoy watching this stuff come apart. You can see how easily it makes it look, at this time-lapse speed. You can get them apart pretty quick and kind of assess what your situation is and what kind of work you need to do. Having the proper tools is critical, like a flywheel puller there. Electronics are nice to really, that's another place to really take good photos so you can remember how the wiring was run. Michael's got that gun hanging from his pants, that speed gun. He's a professional here at tearing this thing down. Got that frame sitting out there, all ready to go. One of the things that a lot of the powder coaters like is for you to power wash your frame. Get all that grease off there before you take it to the powder coater guy, and look for cracks or any dents that you want to weld up before it's too late. Okay, we got the engine on the bench here. It's in an engine stand, that looks really nice for these photos, and you can catch some really cool stuff, in this thing, like, draining the oil. This looks really cool, but you don't have to have a cool stand like this to work on the bench. You can have some 2x4s, blocks of wood are really easy and nice to work on when you have that engine on the bench. You can see just how worn those cases are. Those cases had it's like a clear coat on there, and kind of hard to clean up. So you can see it's worn through. This thing had some good time on it, but I will say I believe that a lot of these older bikes like this, especially the Japanese ones, were built a lot better. How do you like that sludge in there? That's pretty cool looking. So we got some sludge down in these cases, and it's an old bike. I mean, this thing's well over 30 years old, and that's what happens. I suggest when you're taking apart your first engine, if you haven't done one, try to do it with a friend, a buddy, an uncle. I did it with my uncle the first time or two, and even if you have to pay somebody, if you got somebody to shop that'll do it with you, Got to have some good tools. Case splitter. When I was young, we didn't have. We just used blocks of wood and some brass pieces to do it. If you're gonna pry on cases, be really careful. Really careful. Prefer not to ever see anybody pry on cases with a screwdriver or anything like that. So you don't want to leave any marks in the cases where you could have an air leak potentially later and so forth. So be real careful of that. It's a lot of work and time in these projects. We were trying to figure it out, how many hours Michael had in this thing, and I don't know if we can truly ever know. The work isn't just in the shop here, like, you know, pulling these bearings out. It isn't just this work, but it's all the research work, getting on the computer, looking stuff up, and trying to find parts. And you can have hours, almost the same amount of time or more in there looking. Those chain adjuster bolts can oftentimes be stuck in a swing arm. So lucky they weren't, because that can really just be a game changer on a swing arm. So always grease those. You can see having a press really helps to get all these bearings out. And you see everything's supported correctly here as Michael's working on this. You want to make sure that you're doing a good job. And he's not using any real fancy tools. You can use sockets. He's got some extensions, and you can size everything up, and you're not going to damage anything, but you can do damage if you're not careful. The brakes on these bikes, they take a lot of abuse. They get down there and get oxidized and worn out, so they're going to need a full rebuild. We have some videos and so forth showing some more in depth here, but this is a quick look at getting these things apart, man. It's a lot of work in here. You want to be careful with what you're doing. Vapor blasting, he uses Premier Vapor Blasting, and they helped him clean up these parts. And vapor blasting is a new tool we have. We used to only have sandblasting. Vapor blasting puts such a better finish on things. It can really clean up. Most people want to get all that grease off first, like in a solvent tank, and then vapor blasting can just give you this kind of finish. It's just incredible. The finishes look almost better than stock in a lot of cases. Really looks nice. And with some parts like this is pretty custom. Michael's gonna just clean up and buff before he paints on these engine cases, and even do some custom, Bondo work to the ignition cover. You can see he does a really good job of that. The sandblasting will kind of even things out, take away some of the nicks and so forth. This is the Bondo I'm talking about, like, look. You can do some little work on a part that's not available anymore. You can't just go buy one of these somewhere. And any used one you find is probably going to be just as bad or worse. Nice custom paint booth. So it shows you don't have to make anything real fancy to have a paint booth. You can make it outside here. You don't have paint going all over your vehicles or in your shop. And you notice Michael's wearing a mask, and he's safety first. Kudos to Michael for being safety conscious. Four coats and a clear coat. I think he's got it pretty good. ICW straightened and welded up these radiators, but these things are pretty visible, and they were always painted, so getting them back to black looks really nice. Powder coating, we all know, is the ticket. If you want it to really look good and last a long time, it's so nice. So out in California, we use San Diego powder coating. They know all the places to tape off because they're kind of specialists. They're owned by motorcycle guys. Not all of them do. Like this one doesn't have a lot of some things taped off where you mount the coil and where your engine goes in. Some of those areas you're gonna have to sand off before you do that. We were able to weld on some works connection extenders. Actually welded those out here in California with my welder Dallas, did a great job, and then he got them powder coated to match the frame. That looks really sweet, huh? And just cleaned up those springs and new foot peg pins, washers, cotter pins. Really nice looking. All these bolts, a lot of these, like that nut, you can get new, but a lot of them you can't. So you're just gonna clean them up. A buffing wheel like Prime has, Cameron Namella has these little buffing pads he distributes out. They're really good for doing this kind of stuff. Like a Scotch-Brite type wheel. Wire wheels are good for like that middle part of the bolt, but the rest of it you'd rather get on this bolt I would rather get a new one on that nut for the rear axle. Some of them aren't too expensive, but the big bolts, they can be pretty costly. That looks amazing, doesn't it? Looks so nice. And we just did some of this similar stuff with Ratto's build that we're working on with MX Revival. He also does some as well. Pause right there a second. Okay, so on a lot of these older bikes, a lot of parts aren't available. We really wanted to run FMF. It was hard to find one. We had to do some custom work to make it look this amazing. Had to strip it and make this thing look good as new. Some parts like this basket, pretty notched up and worn out. You can use a grinder to grind these heads off when you're changing out a basket. A little quicker than a drill. Drill, you just wipe out the drill bits. A grinder, but you gotta be careful not to hit the big wheel there. When it's time to get started putting these things back together, heat's your friend when it goes to putting bearings in. Heat up that aluminum, it expands so much. That's why you see guys heat up surfaces. I like to even freeze the bearings, then you're getting twice the impact. Guys will wonder why there's grease in those seals, and that's so it runs smoothly on the shaft and there's no chance of it getting cut by the shaft sliding in there. For us moto guys, watching this, I think is the same as, regular people watching the waves crash on the beach. This will just lull you into a nice, peaceful, calm feeling watching the transmission moving nicely and shifting perfectly like this.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat, head pulled down over your eyes. Every part of you wants to surrender, but darling, you were meant to survive. With every...
You notice they're brand new spec bolts. We went the original look and finish, not their newer style looking one, so it kind of looked more original. Brand new washer, even on that drain bolt. Those drain bolts can get stripped out quite often, so I always like to check those threads while the cases are apart in case you got to repair them. It's a lot easier to do it when the cases are apart. I would use a hand impact, air impact on that nut, or check the torque. Hold it with a Motion Pro tool. Nice fresh clutch plates going there. It looks so nice.
Staring out over miles of land without it, but wanting to build up walls. Lift me up in your branches. We can watch the sunrise. Just a couple.
Assembly lube is really nice to have in a lot of those places that have some, surfaces that you want to make sure pre-lubed before there's oil in the cases. One thing I have to remember is when you're putting these things together, if there's any binding or problems, don't force it, because you can break something, so something's usually wrong. These things usually go together pretty smoothly. Fathead Racing cleaned up the cylinder and power valve area for us on this thing for Michael, and you can see how nice it looks.
Too many days in the darkness without a glimpse of the light. Running tired and broken and scared, but I swear I'll never give up the fight. I see you broken and beat, head pulled down over your eyes. Every part of you wants to surrender.
Installing studs, you don't need a fancy tool, just a couple of nuts and a couple of wrenches. You can put the studs on. Not too bad.
We are born again. Open your heart, spend less time in your head. With every star, we are born again.
Head nuts are probably the ones you really need to properly torque. And you go in a crossing pattern. That little white clip on the power valve, that then of course I saw Michael has a brand new fresh one, which is of course what you'd want to have on there, because those things will dry out and break. Installing the V-force on some of these older bikes, you have to do this little custom cutting on the stock boot, because the V-force already has that kind of shape in there. The V-force we find is one of the best mods for a two-stroke, for the money, for performance. On the more modern bikes, most of the OEMs have kind of copied a lot of the V-force design. You don't have to have the carburetor on your bench, but it sure looks cooler when it's sitting here in the garage, right, Rado? And when it's spinning around like this, it looks like magic. We could watch this thing spin here for 10 minutes alone, right?
With every star, we are born again. Open your heart and spend less time in your...
Those brand new spec bolts, Just looks so nice for this thing. So getting back to the chassis, it's a lot easier many times installing bearings with an all thread like that setup, rather than pressing them in and risk damaging the bearings, the brand new bearings. A lot of times it can be easy to damage those. So a lot of times it's easier just with a setup like what Michael has right here. Motion Pro has these. Very nice and simple way to do it.
To survive with every star, we are born again. Open your heart, spend less time in your head. With every star, we are born again. Open your heart, spend less time in your head.
This is one of the best feelings, getting that engine back in the frame, getting the swing arm hooked up, those triple clamps on. It starts to look like a bike again. So a lot of times it can be in this kind of state for a while while you're gathering up the rest of your parts. But when you get it to this point right here, it just is a good feeling, because you know there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Staring out over miles of land without it, but wanting to build up walls.
These old bikes, the timing marks are right there on the stator, and they have a stock mark, usually really easy to find. You can see he buffed off the grounds there for his coil going on.
We are born again. Open your heart and spend less time in your head. With every star, we are born again.
You saw how Michael double-checked after he tightened stuff up. He made sure that the swing arm and linkage all moved freely. If you have something wrong, it could bind up. So really nice to be able to just simply check that real quick. And cleaned up the stock hoses, vapor blasting, able to clean those up. Sure looks nice with the brand new bolts again. Now Michael had the radiator cap on there. That's kind of a big no-no. I'm always worried about at the end of the process forgetting that you don't have coolant in there. I'm sure Michael wouldn't forget, but we would. We're working on too much stuff around here.
I used to be a free man, did whatever I did please. But ever since she wandered in there,
ODI has 7/8 bars, which I really like the feel of these on these older bikes. You don't need big bars, and most of these bikes are being built more of nostalgia than needing to have a big bar bin.
the time to pass. Write me letters to sign them within I love you. Promise you won't change. I'll head out and buy a ring. Hey, do you like my handcuffs? I threw the key away. Hey, do you like my jumpsuit, honey? I wear it every day. She said, tell me what you're in for. You know that I'm a prisoner of your love. And even if I had wings, I'd never even try to fly from your love.
We got the suspension redone out with Race Tech in California. It took a bit of work because we had to get some shock parts, shock shaft Michael found online. A lot of these older bikes, it is a nightmare on suspension, on getting that suspension sorted out. So that's something that's a lot of people don't calculate on, and I warn people of is suspension. With our ODI, we like to run clamp-on grips, but they do have conventional grips like this for cases where we don't have a proper throttle tube for this bike. You can just run the regular glue-on grips.
I love you, promise you won't change. I'll head out and buy a ring. Hey, do you like my handcuffs, darling? I threw the key away.
Got our air box prepped and you can see how nice this thing came out after vapor blasting. Of course, the electron carb is the only modern looking thing, not critical to this build, but it sure looks cool and gives it a more modern feel. When you get lonely in the shop, you can have your dog out there keeping you company, moving stuff around.
Say you come visit often when the sky outside these bars is all gray.
Bolting up that $1,000 pipe with all that work in there. So you want to take care of that thing.
And do you like my jumpsuit, honey? I wear it every day. She said, tell me what you're in for. You know that I'm a prisoner of your love. And even if
Fresh pack silencer, nothing better than that sound of that two-stroke coming out of that little shorty. Oh, what's this? An aluminum gas tank from Europe. Not necessary, but sure pretty cool. So it comes kind of pretty crude looking. To keep the cost down, I think, on these tanks, they really wanted to, they just kind of came the way they came as far as the aluminum finish. And most guys weren't building show bikes, they're kind of building some vintage bikes to race, or post-vintage, we'll say. So Michael buffed on this thing, cleaned it up a bit, so it looked nice on the bike. Hand-built tank, sure looks pretty spiffy.
I used to be a free man, did whatever I did please. But ever since she wandered in there, I've been living down on my knees. I said, come on, lock me up.
Got our uni filter going on here. I'm not sure if this bike's ever going to see dirt, but he's got it properly oiled, so that'll be nice. I don't know. I don't think it ever will, which is kind of nice for a bike like this. New IMS shifter. They actually make one that fits up nice.
Do you like my handcuffs? I threw the key away. And do you like my jumpsuit, honey? I wear it every day. She said, tell me what you're in for. You know that I'm a prisoner of your love. And even if I
Here, Michael's adjusting the power valve. There's a setting, and I'd have to look it up. I remember back, because I had one of these bikes in '91, RMs 250, and you would adjust your power valve with this thing, and then you'd have like 3/4 or 1 turn preload on that spring. So I think Michael's getting the magic setting for that power valve spring. Looks like he went to 2 turns there or so. So we'll see.
knows I'm good at keeping secrets, and the whispers are the sweetest sound. She said, come on, lock me up, lights out whenever you want. Phone calls through the glass, waiting for the time to pass. Write me letters too, sign them with an I love you. Promise you won't change, I'll head out and buy a ring. Hey, do you like my handcuffs, darling? I threw the key away. And do you like my jumpsuit, honey?
Getting your oil and coolant finally in the bike is a great feeling, So now it's getting close to, you got these 2 things in, it's getting close to startup time. And here's the last thing you need to start her up, is some fresh mixed premix gas.
You come visit often when the sky outside these bars is all gray. Hey, do you like my handcuffs, darling? I threw the key away.
More gas, Michael. Give it more. The best feeling ever. Rado knows this feeling right here. That's the best feeling ever right there. Rado knows this feeling. I used to get excited about it, not so much anymore because we've done so many, but it is a pretty cool feeling when you finish a long build. And then you're not even finished. You still have a lot of work to do, but you get this thing started and you know it's not too much left to go.
I used to be a free man, did whatever I did please. But ever since she wandered in there, I've been living down on my knees.
That vapor blast cabinet in your garage is pretty nice to have around, that you can just go do it at any time. And these wheels are really nice because you can't really dig in and mess up stuff. That's what's nice about these kind of wheels. If you try to do it on a grinder or files, you can do too much. You can see how nice this piece came out. Didn't have to go get a new one, and they're hard to find, or probably nearly impossible to find. You like that lift? A lot of guys like that lift. Guys get on me for not having a lift like that. If I was doing a long-term project like this, it is kind of nice to have that thing sitting on there and you can move it up and down as you need to. Pretty nice. Tusk has those. Oh, this tool, I forgot the name of this tool. We use this on another build, and because these holes can't take a time cert, there's not enough room, this tool will pop them in there and get you some new threads. Metric 8mm threads probably for that size, for those bolts. Got a 10 or 12, it looks like a 12 head on there. So that's the proper way to do it, what Michael did right there.
She said, come on, lock me up, lights out whenever you want. Phone calls through the glass, waiting for the time to pass. Write me letters to.
Racetech did a hard anodize on the lowers there, and that coats the inside as well. So we're able to, as I mentioned earlier, suspension's a big source of problems for us in a lot of these builds. Sometimes you can have a lot of money into the suspension, or as much or more than you paid for the bike, or the rest of the work can be just in suspension on some of these older bikes. So that's a really area to be careful of. So now these brake pieces going into this vapor blaster, one thing I would recommend is blocking off the holes where the pistons go in. You don't want to make those any larger. And of course you're going to clean them out and you can get to rebuilding these things.
When the sky outside these bars is all gray. Hey, do you like my handcuffs, darling? I threw the key away.
So you actually use brake fluid as your lube instead of grease, obviously. So just use brake fluid as your lube as you're assembling these things.
She said, tell me what you're in for. You know that I'm a prisoner of your love. And even if I had wings, I never even try to fly.
Bolting up that master cylinder and brake lever. See, Michael went with a stock looking brake lever and clutch lever rather than using our mainstay works connection levers, just to give it that good look. Galliford was able to make us lines that were the same as this 89. We actually had to send them our sample ones. Same thing on the rear. You're going to clean up all these pieces, and you can see how much work and time there is involved in doing this. And Michael having his own cabinet really helps and saves a lot of time and money on this kind of work, unless you have somebody right next to you or close to you that can help you with it. if anybody's doing an 89 RM125, RM250, anywhere in that range, Galfer knows the spec to make these brake lines because of us. We sent them the samples, and now they've got a nice spec for you, and you can see they fit really nicely. Bleeding lines by yourself isn't a lot of fun. Bleeding lines, period, isn't typically a lot of fun. So it's best to have a friend or a wife who wants to come out at, I think Michael works until 1 or 3 in the morning on these at times, so he's probably not getting anybody out to help him. Wheel building, I actually just built my first wheel not that long ago, and it's actually not too bad. Watching some videos, and Michael's got a good little process going.
Walking down the avenue where we used to play, the house on the corner is still the same today as it was when we were children, innocent as innocent can be. I borrowed all your records, you borrowed mine from me.
Look at that nice true wheel, not too bad. Oh, using soap on the tire install with no gloves. Oh, and he doesn't have the tube in the tire. Michael's not been watching my videos, Rado.
Those were the times. Those were the ways. So take me.
Okay, we got some new Galfer head rotors as well. And we got our rims and spokes from Faster USA. Helped us with those, and Michael's able to assemble them in Nebraska. Of course, have our Dunlop tires.
Here I can see that we were blind to the burdens we would shoulder and the struggles we would find. But growing made us strong as strong can be.
And able to run our chain on here.
Those were the times.
You want to get that chain slack set correctly. Michael had a buddy at a Harley shop over there in Nebraska where he lives that was able to help him dyno in these things because it was cold. Wintertime couldn't really run them up and down the roads. Being able to get him on the dyno to make sure everything's running well, really nice help. Cool to see these things run. He's got some support helping him. It took a while to crate these things up in Nebraska. We actually sent a few bikes out at the same time, but we got them all trucked out here to California. And the reason for this is there's no magazines to shoot these things in Nebraska. So Michael really wanted to see these things run, and I enjoyed starting these things up. And we're able to make some cool custom frame tape that Decal Works was able to help us with, and make some templates. And so if you're ever in need of these things, Decal Works has these. How nice is that? So got some real nice custom graphics for this thing for our dirt bike magazine shoot.
You borrowed mine from me. We sat and talked for hours in a box hung in a tree.
I failed to mention that Millennium helped us with that cylinder, and it came out really nice. Seeing that logo there just reminded me of that. I think the bike looks better in my shop. Should have kept it out here, huh?
Those were the times. Those were the ways. So take me back. So take me back to the good old days.
So we made up some graphics for the tank. We've shot it both ways, and then people go, "Why'd you cover up the tank?" I was worried it was a little too much shiny. We shot it both ways, and I think most people preferred it with the bare aluminum look. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed watching this whole video. Now you got to check out what this thing looks like. Here we go. Look at that! Ta-da! It's incredible, huh? What do you think, Michael?
It's awesome. Amazing.
It is so cool, and the look is amazing. From the graphics to the color powder coat you got done, matched up with our DecalWorks graphics. The seat, that blue and yellow looks so cool. It's incredible. So, I mean, everybody that watched the video got to see this thing all come together. It's pretty amazing. All right, here's a few pictures from our photo shoot at Dirt Bike Magazine, where we got it in their little photo studio. We got Mark Tilley here shooting photos. He really enjoyed the bike and spending time with Michael Fisher and his dad, and just a good time. And everybody knows the legendary Dirt Bike Magazine, so it's pretty nice to have this thing going here. And it made Michael's day, week, month, year being able to get this thing seen here in Dirt Bike Magazine. It was fun shooting it. And then as you can see now in this pretty amazing result from what this thing started looking like and what it looks like now. Hopefully you guys enjoy two-strokes. I think most people do, fixing up these old two-strokes. We've talked about this before, that it probably doesn't make a ton of financial sense, right?
No, it doesn't. But but when you see this at the end, I mean, it's all worth it. Like, it's going to be a cool display piece.
And that's what we talk about. It's probably worth it if you build it yourself, for yourself, or you're building it with your son, your brother, whatever, your uncle. You're doing it with somebody or yourself, and that's what your goal's got to be. You're not going to be able to build something like this to make money at and sell it and make money. Pretty tough, right?
For sure.
Don't tell your wife.
Yeah.
All right. So hopefully you enjoyed watching. Check you out later. See ya.